Namaste. Good evening to everybody in India. Good morning to everyone in the Western Hemisphere. And let's plunge into this series now. One prayer to Lord Krishna. Namami Narayana Pada Pankajam Karomi Narayana Pujanam Sada Vadami Narayana Nama Nirmalam Smarami Narayana Tattvam Avyayam. Emotional intelligence. Very essential for us to be effective in whatever we do and to be effective in getting people to do things well, to be in harmony with us, so that this entire experience of life is much better than otherwise. We have been looking at broadly 4 areas of skills, and that is one way of presenting the topic. Otherwise, as we have repeatedly said, different authors have talked about emotional intelligence using different models. But in this series, we are sticking to that particular division of the areas. The first was self-awareness, which is so foundational to everything else. Second was self-management. And thirdly, which we are now taking up on this fourth day, because the first day was general introduction, the third area of skills is we increase our social awareness. Social awareness. And without being long on it, let me hasten to add, here too, it is awareness of emotions in others, not 100 other things that also apply to them. And it may have its own value to notice by what car somebody came, what dress someone is wearing, and so there are what his qualification is, and so on. These are also important in their own way. There is no end to gathering information. All information has a place, but our context is to be aware of the emotions of people. In meetings, in simple encounters, even at home, when members of the family are seen one morning in high spirits and another little down, do we fully understand them? Therefore, we take up this evening here, going by Indian Standard Time, we take up this third area of social awareness, and towards that, let me open a couple of slides which come handy in conveying our point. So, social awareness is our theme now, and first question we raise here is, why is social awareness important? Especially some people among us who have mistaken spirituality to be turning away from the society, leave the mad world to do whatever it wants. We better mind our business, shut the door, meditate, get enlightened, etc. Well, if someone truly has that tremendous vairagya, one could do that. People like Sri Ramakrishna, people like Swami Tapovanam, they just stayed in a little area and connected with God. Sri
Gopni
Ramakrishna
हुआ ना.
was with Mother Kali, devotion to Divine Mother. There we have Swami Tapovan, Guru of Swami Chinmayananda. He not only stayed put in Uttarakashi, living an ascetic's life, but advised Swami Chinmayananda also, don't go to the plains. They will unnecessarily distract you. Your sadhana will be gone. Stay in Himalayas. That was the advice Swami Tapovan gave to Swami Chinmayananda. But Swami Chinmayananda very much wanted to share the glorious knowledge of Vedanta with people. So, some, let us say, 1 in 10 may want to go into deep meditation and ekanta, etc. But even there, one has to have the adhikara, that is, eligibility. It is not at all an option for most of us. If we try to do that, we will go mad, or we will become so dull and we lose whatever passion we had in life. Most of us need to sort out. Most of us need to work out various relationships and resolve our conflicts, and in a natural, in a truly evolved manner. If we turn inward with great intensity, that is definitely sanctioned by the scriptures. So for us, social awareness and social responsiveness are very important. But why is social awareness important? Is the question that this slide asks. It is foundational to relationship management. Awareness is the forerunner of managing relationships with our own spouse or children, with neighbors, anybody, at workplace, with people to whom we report, or with people who report to us. There is no end to the network of relationships, and if all our relationships, or if not all, most of our relationships are marked by goodwill and cooperation and mutual trust, heaven is on the earth. In contrast, if our relationships are somehow, they have turned sour, they are little bitter, then there is hell upon the earth. So, this social awareness is the basis for relating better. And what is involved in it is we should accurately pick up on the emotions of others. Very similar to what we said about self-awareness. To accurately pick up. So, if we misunderstand them and interpret the scenario differently, then all the actions we take also will go wrong. All right, when we understand what others are thinking, what others are feeling, then the way is clear. It paves the way for right steps to be taken, which cannot be taken for granted. That is another skill that we have to develop. That is our topic tomorrow. But in order that the way is paved for deciding what we should do, there must be an accurate reading. In the Bhagavad Gita, at many places, Sri Krishna drops hints at being well related to others. I must admit that the expressions are not so explicit in the context of relationships, but at the same time, we can see that it is implied beyond any shade of doubt. One example is, while describing great upasakas of Brahman, Akshara upasakas, we have Sri Krishna using the expression Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. You would expect in chapter 12, he talks about Akshara upasakas and upasakas of God with a certain personality. The impersonal Brahman versus personified God are in question there. And while describing both of them, Sri Krishna goes out of his way to emphasize that these upasakas, these worshippers, these spiritual seekers have a very healthy relation with the people around them. The verse that I especially am referring to is about the Vedantis who are fixing their mind in Brahman. But about them, he says, they are very interested in the well being of all. Ye tvaksharamanirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyancha kutastamachalam dhruvam sanniyamyendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhayah te prapnuvanti mameva. And the punchline at the end of those two shlokas, 3 and 4, oh, it's by mistake 12.71, actually it is 12.4. The fourth shloka, 12.4. 12.4 at the end says, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Unless they understand the suffering, unless they understand the feelings of others, how would they be able to engage in the service of others? And we have numerous instances in different religious systems how sainthood is invariably tied together with empathy, sympathy, compassion for people around. Swami Vivekananda, the great brave champion of Vedanta, who, as I said a while before, studied under Swami Ramakrishna, while Ramakrishna stayed put mostly in the Dakshineshwar temple, Vivekananda made it a point to serve humanity. And most of you know the great slogan he gave to all the monks who studied under him, his disciples. He said, Atmano mokshaya jagad hitaya cha. We have twin goals, he said to the young monks. Don't think that you are here just for your liberation. That is one of the two goals. Atmano mokshaya, for our own liberation, jagad hitaya cha. Obviously, Vivekananda, one of the finest representatives of Vedanta, had deeply drunk from the fountain of Bhagavad Gita, where it is said, you must understand others and clear all misunderstandings and build good relationships. Therefore, very importantly, we may feel differently about some situation, but we must know how other people concerned feel about the same situation. We have number of scenarios where perceptions are different. Look at this humorous scenario given in this slide. This lady and this man are face to face, and between them, maybe on the floor, a figure is written. In this very simple scenario, which even primary school children can understand, the lady looks at that figure and says, this is 9. 10 minus 1, 9. And the man says, what are you talking? This is clearly 6. So what is 9 for the lady is 6 for the man. And what is the truth? As all of us know, it is 9 also, it is 6 also. In some practical scenarios, a religious symbol, could be auspicious to that religious group, but to some other group it could be very dangerous. I have heard of an actual story where a young girl of Indian origin, that means her parents had gone to Toronto, Canada from India, and the young girl was taking some book to her school, and the school was run mainly by Jewish people. The principal and most of the teachers were Jewish. Now, the girl had a picture in her book of swastika. Swastika is a holy symbol in Hinduism. Her parents were Hindus from India. But the Jewish people running the school looked at that and got alarmed. For them, that same swastika is the symbol of Hitler, Nazi regime. And they actually wanted to take some action against that student. But then the parents rushed when they came to know and clarified that there is a confusion here. So, as it is written here in this graphic, truth can often be subjective to our position, our perspective, and previous directives, what we have been told, how we have been conditioned by friends, family, and others. So, the question at the top of this slide is, why do we not understand others? All of us want to understand, but we don't. The answer is, we get caught up in our own emotions. Even as the other person has some emotion, uh, we don't notice it. All of us go through it. I have a memory of one of my earliest days. I think I was in 8th grade or so. I saw some movie and was so excited. Next day at the school, you know, some teacher was not paying attention. He had left us to ourselves. So I caught hold of a friend of mine and said, "You know, sit down here. I must tell you the story of that movie. It was on the hero of Mahabharata, Karna. Karna, the eldest brother among Pandavas." I made him sit and went on telling him. Then this happened. It took a long time for me to notice that he had gone to sleep against a pillar. Oh my God, in my excitement about having to tell the story of Dan, Shur, Karna, I didn't notice that it was such boredom to that good friend of mine. We get caught up in our own emotions. We go on talking, as I am doing now, with our monologue. It's not a dialogue, monologue, and we do not listen. So, Bhagavad Gita does drop hints at being receptive, being sensitive. I will give a couple of examples later. But like we did in an earlier session, in the domain of Subhashitam, we have a lot of things said about how listening is important. One of the shlokas in some Subhashita, it says, Shrotram means ears. Ears don't become beautiful by wearing some nice earrings, which are okay. Nobody says don't wear, but your ears are truly wonderful if they listen. Shrotram shrutena iva na kundalena danena panihi. Your hands too don't become very charming just by wearing something special. Or maybe to give example of some gadget, you have a latest Apple iWatch on your phone, on your hand. That doesn't make your hands beautiful. How much have you given? Dana. Danena panir natukankanena. Vibhati kayaha karunaparanam paropakaraihi natu chandanena. The whole body is so worthy when we serve others, not by putting sandal paste all over. Therefore, listening has been given tremendous importance, and unfortunately, in our education system too, we have been made to pass exams, get good marks, and therefore it is said listen to the teacher in the class and memorize everything and so on. It's equally important, if not more, to listen to people in all other settings, not just in the classroom. Now, the one point that repeatedly needs to be clarified, understood, sorted out is how misconceptions and misunderstandings take place in relationships. We do not understand what that other person is saying or thinking or feeling. So, how do we improve our social awareness? Can we listen empathetically? Sympathy is to feel so somebody is sad, we say, oh, I'm sad to know you are sad. I'm not sad, but I'm sad to know that you are sad. I am myself, left to myself, I am okay. But empathy is, as they say, to stand in his shoes, to read the other person emotionally. It may be sorrow, it may be some insecurity, it may be some grave concern, it may be some anxiety, it may be a dilemma that he is facing. And we understand the gravity, how serious that dilemma is. And we need to observe others' responses. We cannot just take them for granted. We need to see from their angle of view. You know, I often quote from Stephen Covey, the author of Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. In that book, one of the stories that he shares is of great relevance here. He talks about how on, on the sea and in dark, two captains realize that already they had come pretty close on the vast waters of the sea, and unless they take quick action, there would be a collision. So, the captain of one ship, using some communication equipment of those good old days, says to the other person, other captain, both are naval captains, military navy or merchant navy, does not matter. One naval captain says to the other captain, what is your rank? And that person says, my rank is such and such. You know, in Indian or anywhere, navy, merchant navy, there are various ranks. And this person says, oh, then your rank is lesser than mine. Since you are of a lower rank, you go to the right. You go to starboard, or they have some technical language. You go to the right and make way for my ship. And those days, the communication equipment also had its limitations. Like you and I suffer when our phones don't give very clear signal. The other guy understands that I am asked, the other captain is asking me to give way. But he helplessly says, no, no, sir, captain, I know you are of higher rank, but you please make way. That makes this first captain so angry. This guy of lower rank than mine is refusing to give way. So there was a heated argument. But after a little more of conversation, the second captain makes it clear, sorry, I cannot move because I am not on a ship. I am actually on a little base, a land base that cannot move. That is, stationary. So he makes it clear. See this communication gap. He should have said it right in the beginning. I am not navigating a ship at all. But then, see, not all are gifted with language skills. Not all are gifted with clarity of communication. Unintentionally, sometimes, party A does not give the full picture. And the party B gets very annoyed, irritated, agitated. And when party B comes to know, this is why he is not moving in this example. The junior person of lesser rank is not in a moving ship. He is on a little naval base, maybe on a small island on the sea, and therefore he just cannot move. So in a few minutes, of course, it became clear at the nick of the moment, the senior captain changes his direction and a great tragedy was averted. In this way, very many scenarios in our life, even at home, you don't have to be in naval captains. Between two friends, there can be some misunderstanding because of many times lack of awareness and sometimes lack of communication. Communication and this awareness go hand in hand, but right communication will come tomorrow in when we take up what should be done. Communicate better, give the larger picture. Don't say later, that is what I meant. If you had meant it, why didn't you say in the beginning itself? Ah, no, then you give some excuse. I thought you understood. No, the onus of making the other person understand is very many times on you only. It is your responsibility to make the other person see the whole picture. Do not imagine that he should understand out of his vast experience, etc. In fact, the second bullet here is observe others' responses. This is important because it is not just about what they speak, their body language, or their gestures, or their responses to some particular things that we say. So it is said that good psychologists, apart from reading all sorts of books and stuffing their head with so many theories of human behavior, good psychologists actually observe human behavior. Long back I had heard a joke also. It was said, what is the definition of a psychologist? And the answer given was, a psychologist is somebody who, in a hall where there are many men and many pretty women also, uh, the psychologist is sitting there, and as some more people come, and as another very pretty lady walks in, everybody looks at that young pretty lady maybe, but a psychologist worth the salt will not look at the lady. He will be looking at all the people, how they are behaving. Who stretches his neck more? Who forgets everything else and forgets everything else and looks at the lady walking in, and so on. So in lighter vein, a psychologist was defined over there as someone gifted with the ability to look at people's response, how people behave in a certain scenario. So, on the whole, the social awareness, once more, even at home, if your 8-year-old child is not studying, observe that child whole day. What are his interests? What are her, obsessions? Where does he or she spend more time? So observing the behavior of the child. Does he have some health problem? Does he in between when we are asking him, come on, sit down, study? Does he take his hand to the stomach, expressing some pain in the stomach? Does he have some health issue? This is how we will have a better understanding of other people. It may be an 8-year-old child who is not studying or doing homework, or it could be a 50-year-old senior officer who of late is not motivated to do whatever he is supposed to do. Therefore, seeing things from their angle of view comes into the picture. I drop here a hint how Sri Krishna touches upon this more attentive, more receptive consciousness. In order to see from others' angles of view, we need to have a certain inner silence. It's in the fifth shloka of 15th chapter that Lord Krishna says, those who are way high on the spiritual ladder have no pride in them, because being so caught in our own emotions happens many times when we are very proud. I am wearing a new dress, let us say, and I want everybody to see that. I have won an award 2 days ago, and I am expecting everybody to talk about it. The award I won, the recognition I got. That is called mana. In the same way, some kind of moha, putra moha, stri moha, dhana moha, some kind of extra importance that we tend to give to money or pleasure or position. When that kind of undue importance is not given, when we are not filled with some kind of pride, then we are very receptive. We are then truly able to listen. by merely deciding to listen. Okay, tomorrow onwards, if you tell me I'm going to listen by deciding like that, we can't go far. Why we are unable to see others, understand others is we think they also have similar background like ours. No, people have a different. They have grown up in a different setting. Their needs are different. Their narratives, that is, narratives of various issues given to them, are different. Today in our country, there is a big tussle going on between the leftists and the rightists, left wing and right wing, and every team, every camp thinks that they are right. Every camp thinks that they will do good to the country because they have been fed with different narratives. Whether some king or some viceroy or some other ruler was noble or was he a, an oppressor? Did he do good to people or did he actually torture people? You will have different accounts given. And for years, some people are given that account and their mind is conditioned. We think we are right. They think they are right. Who could be right? We don't know. Let me share with you a little joke that one of you only shared with me over WhatsApp the other day. It is expressed as a scenario between the famous characters Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson one day decide to go camping. And they go to some jungle and put a tent. And after, of course, going around, seeing the beauty of the jungle, maybe some hunting, whatever. But as it gets very dark, they put a tent and they sleep. And they go to deep sleep. After all, they were tired. But at midnight, Sherlock Holmes, the famous detective, he wakes up and he wakes up Dr. Watson also. And Watson said, what? It's not morning yet. Why are you disturbing my sleep? Holmes says, no. Please look up. And Watson looks up and the beautiful sky. Then Sherlock Holmes says, what do you see? What? Yeah, stars are beautiful and the moon is so pretty and it's such a pleasant, very pleasing sky. And Dr. Watson goes on describing the beautiful sky. Then Sherlock Holmes says, Buddhu, I'm using a Hindi word here, he hits Dr. Watson on his shoulder and says, you are not getting the point. Somebody has stolen our tent. There is no tent here. And therefore you are able to see this whole sky. Then Dr. Watson jumps out of his bed and realizes, see the problem of perception. Dr. Watson was able to see only the sky. It didn't occur to me. We have lost our tent and since the tent has been taken away, we are able to see the sky and so on. Life is full of such scenarios. So we have the need to see things from different angles of view. Among intelligent people in all fields of human life, we have seen there is a high social awareness. Here I'll show you a picture and you wonder at this picture. A big rock. I'm sure this has come to many of you over this WhatsApp. You know the joke. Till recently everybody was called Homo sapiens. That was our species name. It's a joke, of course. Now they say our species has been renamed. All of us are Homo WhatsAppians. We are so much into WhatsApp, getting a lot of junk also along with good information. That's another story. So how can such a big, huge rock float like that in air as this picture shows? Keep that aside. Now I have written three bullets here. Bernard Shaw, Winston Churchill, Lal Bahadur Shastri. Who are these people? Of course, everybody knows who they are. How come they were able to see things from different perspectives? What are the examples you have in mind, you may ask me. It is said Bernard Shaw, was a great playwright, wonderful figure in the literary field, known for a lot of wit and wisdom, but a great human being too. He gave glowing compliments to Mahatma Gandhi when Gandhi died. There is a lot that is said about Bernard Shaw. But the episode that I'm trying to share with you is once a certain good looking lady walked up to him, and Bernard Shaw was a little taken aback. Why is this pretty woman coming towards me? And that charming lady said to Bernard Shaw, Mr. Shaw, I have a proposal to you. And Mr. Shaw said, what is that? You are so intelligent and I am so good looking. Why not we both marry? Bernard Shaw asked, what is the point? If an intelligent person like you and a pretty woman like me marry, we will have a child, let's say a son or a daughter, who is intelligent like you and pretty handsome like me. Instantly, Bernard Shaw, without looking left or right, says, what if it goes other way around? Your intelligence and my looks. Apparently, Bernard Shaw didn't have charming looks. If my looks and your intelligence come into our child, what a terrible thing it would be. Likewise, Winston Churchill, who was a Nobel Prize winner in literature, but later he was known more for being the Prime Minister of United Kingdom at those crucial times. I personally don't admire him. I have my problems with him. I have my complaints against him. But he was known for great wit and wisdom. And in the Parliament of England, when heated exchanges took place, on one occasion, a lady member of Parliament got up and said with so much hatred, she said to Winston Churchill, I hate you. If I were your wife, I would have given you poison. She used such unparliamentary language, can you believe? If I were your wife, I would have given you poison and killed you. But Winston Churchill was so intelligent, he had that presence of mind. He sees the scenario from another angle of view. And immediately he replies, Lady, I'm glad you said that, but let me tell you, if you are my wife and you were to give me poison, without looking left or right, I would drink it and finish my life rather than continue to be your husband. So what a retort, what a rebuttal. And the whole, you can imagine, all the members of the parliament must have looked at that lady with sympathy. Lastly, Lal Bahadur Shastri. I think it was Shastri only. Uh, in a certain place, I believe, they had kept holy books. There was Bible, there was Quran, there was Dhammapada, there was some maybe Torah, you know. And at the bottom, there was there was Bhagavad Gita. And somebody taunted Mr. Shastri, our Prime Minister. Shastri ji, look at this. All other holy books are above, and your Gita is down there. It is down there. But instantly, Shastri ji said, yeah, that shows how Gita is the foundation. Gita is the basis for all the wisdom in the world. Now, friends, these are random examples of all of us do have the ability to see things from another angle. Why don't we do that? In relationships, why don't we do it? So coming to this picture now, this rock, this big rock, seems to be floating in air, and we look, what is this? What is supporting it? Nothing is supporting. What is this? Some Indrajal, some Jadoo, some magic. Now we find that is nothing but an inverted photograph. What was shown seems to have a big rock in thin air, whereas actually the same picture, if you turn it 180 degrees, you will find that it's a big rock sitting pretty in water. Just inversion of an upside down inversion. So a different perspective can change the emotions of others and of us. Time and again, we would, you know, we would have occasions where a little different perspective would make a big difference. In fact, it requires above all our sorting out unnecessary thoughts in our mind. Let me tell you a quick and short story. There was a barn house, barn BARN. Barn house is in some farmland where there is a lot of agricultural produce. They would have a barn house and they would store things, save some crop from rains and so on. And in a barn house, typically there would be sometimes some equipment also, some hammers and some cutting pliers or screwdrivers, some mechanical equipment too. And a certain farmer, this is a story of good old days, had lost a wonderful timepiece. You know how Mahatma Gandhi used to carry a timepiece, a big round one with a chain that would be tied to his waist, to his dhoti and something like that. So that kind of timepiece he had lost and he was miserable because he had sentimental value. Now there were a number of children playing there. After the farmer himself tried to look for and get that and he failed, he asked those boys, please go into the barn house and look for my lost timepiece, a watch, a little clock. And they also go over and they search, nobody gets it. And he feels very sad. He had promised them some wonderful gift, maybe ice cream for everybody or whatever. It was then that a young 9-year-old girl comes from somewhere. She says, Uncle, do you mind if I try to find out? And nobody had hope really. However, they asked that girl, okay, what do we lose by giving you a chance? The young girl goes into the barn house while all these people are outside, and within 5 minutes she comes out with the timepiece, old style with a chain and whatnot. So they were surprised. Oh dear, how did you get this? The girl says, well, all I did was not to run around the place, pull this or push that and climb over here, etc. No. I went in, uncle, and I just sat quietly. And as I sat extremely quietly, I could hear the sound tick, tick, tick coming from a direction. And then I went in that direction and found this. This story has a lot to teach us who are not 8 or 9-year-old girls or boys. We are grown up people, but the mistake we make is we don't have a silent, receptive mind. I had quoted that line from Gita, Nirmana Moha. Swami Chinmayanandaji gave once a very inspiring talk on the floor of his temple in Bombay. I had the blessing to be in the audience that particular day. And he commented on that shloka. Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha sanjnaihi gacchantya mudha padamavyayam tat. The fifth shloka of 15th chapter. And to make the long narration short, Swamiji in his characteristic and dramatic style said that somebody had gifted him a little transistor radio. In the good old days, a little transistor radio was a tremendous excitement. And he could not get either music or news or anything from it. He was so disappointed until that devotee or student came again next day and said, Swami, no, no, it is a new piece that I had brought. Why doesn't it work? And then showed that you have to turn it on and you have to do what is called tuning. In old radio receivers, they would have coarse tuning and then fine tuning. You need to tune the radio. Moment you tune it to Ceylon, in the good old days, Ceylon, later it became Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And that had an upper hand over many Indian stations in entertainment as well as sometimes giving the latest news. So you want to listen to music, you want to hear some speech, you have to tune the radio. Giving that illustration, Swami Chinmayananji drove home the point so well. He said, life will be full of happiness if you tune your mind. Like that 9-year-old girl, that's another story. If you prepare your mind. Somebody used a nice expression, economy of thoughts. We spend money carelessly, we do many other things carelessly, waste away. That is all right. But today we have to talk about, do we think unnecessarily? Do we have too many thoughts, welcoming too many thoughts, jumping from one thought to another, etc.? That would be terrible. If there is an economy of thought, we think when necessary, and even when necessary, we think the right number of thoughts, and then the matter is over, and so on. Now somebody asked a question yesterday, let me raise that. All this Swamiji is wonderful for people like you, because you imagine I have no attachments. You say, people like you who have no attachments, who are Swamis, Sannyasis, we are Grahasthas. Well, it is all in your mind. What is done can be undone. And Grahastha in fact, has many benefits too. Grahastha householder's life, again and again gives you opportunities, challenging situations where you learn. Many a time a sannyasi imagines that he has risen to great heights, not really, because he is not facing the situations. So he believes that he is above things. Once he comes back and gets into some situation, maybe much before a typical householder gets agitated, he may get agitated. He should try out. So, don't think when Ramana Maharshi was asked, how do householders do self-inquiry? He says, you are a householder when you think you are a householder. First, drop that idea and ask, who am I? No matter what image comes to your mind. Like I said in answer to many questions yesterday too, you and I should first try out good things, even for short periods. One of our problems has been, we think, oh, that's very difficult. I think I'll do it if I'm 65, after I cross 68. We postpone. Today and now, if not for 1 hour, if not for 30 minutes, for 15 minutes, for 10 minutes, withdraw the mind and practice. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. I also was thinking about these lectures, and many have been asking, how do we change? Can we change? And it came to my mind, in these corona or COVID times, you and I have been changing our habits because of the necessity. A lot of us had the habit of touching our face. See, even as I am illustrating, I went very near and took the hand away. We would touch our face, the nose or eyes or mouth or anywhere, maybe 200 times, if not more. But after again and again, learning that through the nose, through the eyes, and through the mouth, somebody created the acronym MEN. Men are dangerous, MEN. Mouth, eyes, and nose. Men are dangerous. So, mouth, eyes, and nose. Now, I don't claim that I don't touch at all, but if I was touching 200 times in a day before, now maybe it is just 10 or 12 times. Very careful. And washing hands, who wants to do? See, I almost touched, I think I touched. Washing hands, have we not learned to wash hands every now and then? Especially we open the door and we realize, oh, I held the handle. Or we came back from town and we said, the least I should do now is first wash my hands. So if we can change our habits in this context, we definitely can change the habit of just being in our own thoughts. We can look at things from others' angles of view. So this topic of this evening, social awareness, is taking cognizance of not our emotions. We already said knowing our own emotions is the forerunner, and on that foundation, we then stretch out to understand others' emotions. And tomorrow I will expand more on this. But one of the important areas which we shall take up tomorrow in detail is having understood others' emotions, how we may motivate them. For now, I will share with you just one point. There was a wonderful author, I understand, from one of my elderly friends who is here, I think, in this seminar now. So Professor Pandey shared with me Susan Fowler. Susan Fowler did extensive work on emotional intelligence. And among the many points that she brings out in her works, one of them is every human being, young or old, Westerner or Easterner, every human being actually has three basic needs. They feel the need for autonomy. They feel the need for freedom. So if you want to motivate a son or a daughter, you want to motivate a team member at workplace, can you ensure that whatever you want that person to do should be aligned with what he wants to do? When it is a matter of this is what I want to do and my boss is asking me to do it, then it doesn't come across as being imposed. Everybody wants to be related, wants to care, care for others, and to feel cared for. To give care and to receive care is a relatedness. And thirdly, everybody, even the laziest person, actually in the heart of hearts, want to be efficient, want to be effective, want to be in control of things, want to be a master of situations. But alas, somehow he has gone off track. So if you and I can understand the feelings of our associates and deal with them, communicate with them in such ways whereby they feel, hey, what this person is telling me to do is actually what I want to do. And that will help me, rise in relationship. I will feel more related to everybody. Now I have driven myself to a wall. And lastly, I feel more competent if I am able to do these things. My sense of how good I am, how worthy I am will increase. If the person can be helped to fulfill these basic needs, ARC, that is the acronym apparently. A is autonomy, R is relatedness, and C is competence. And there are a few more points too. So in this way, it's a very interesting science It's a very interesting art and science coming together. This matter of being socially aware and then being active on that front, being socially related. That is, relationship management is going to be our topic tomorrow. Let me pause here and welcome comments and questions and so on. So,